Ever catch yourself looking at something like maybe a movie scene or, a lifestyle trend online,
Hmm.
and you think, wow, that looks amazing, but then there's that little voice asking, what's really going on there?
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of the question we're digging into today, specifically for you listening.
We are.
We found this, well, really fascinating discussion over on Reddit.
Hmm.
A place where people can get pretty honest about what they've actually lived through.
Right.
And what came out was this really strong counter story to a lot of things our culture tends to, well, romanticize.
Hmm.
Things like glamorous jobs, certain lifestyles, even how we connect with each other.
Yeah, we went through just a ton of firsthand accounts for this deep dive. I mean, everything from the supposed magic of the film industry
Right.
to the reality of working with animals or getting out of tough relationships, and even the whole world of mental health, which is so often misunderstood. It's a real mix of human stories.
It really is.
And for you, the listener, it's a chance to kind of peek behind the curtain.
And these personal stories, they're so important because they just cut through the polished versions, the
Yeah.
idealized stuff we usually see.
Totally.
So this deep dive, for you, it's really about getting a more, let's say, nuanced and truthful grasp of these realities. We're trying to go past the shiny surface
Yeah.
to explore what these things actually feel like for the people living them.
So yeah, our mission here is basically to unpack some of these common romanticized ideas. We want to show the sometimes harsh realities underneath, the struggles behind the easy image,
Hmm.
so that you can walk away with a more informed, maybe more empathetic view. Okay, let's get into it. Starting with those industries that often look the shiniest from the outside.
Yeah, good place to start. Like the film industry. You see the premieres, the awards.
Yeah.
It's easy to get swept up.
Oh, totally. The glamour.
But the stories we read, they paint a very different picture. One person straight up called it full of psychopaths, narcissists, and dishonest people. A world where, you know, the individual just doesn't seem to matter much.
It sounds brutal, honestly. We read about people working on commercials just breaking down under the pressure.
Wow.
And essential crew members dealing with constant pain, even like near fatal accidents on set, because they're exhausted and conditions aren't safe.
Yeah, it really makes you think, doesn't it, about the human cost behind the stuff we watch.
It really does.
And what's striking for you to consider is just how massive that gap is between how it looks and how it actually feels day to day.
Hmm.
We saw comments about long-term pros having multiple divorces,
Oof.
serious physical wear and tear, jobs depending on these crazy demanding producers, and even, tragically, people dying from sheer exhaustion. It just shatters that illusion.
Yeah, there was even that comment about making great money,
Mm.
but the trade-off was huge. Like, no creative input, feeling totally isolated from your friends because the work never stops. It definitely challenges that image of, artistic bliss and supportive
It
colleagues.
really does. But just to give you the full picture, we also saw a comment from an indie producer, a director, who's actively trying not to do things that way. They're focusing on like ethical practices on set, reasonable hours to stop accidents. So it shows that, maybe there are other ways to do it, more humane ways.
That's good to hear, actually. An important counterpoint. Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Think about the music industry. You hear a catchy song, maybe in another language,
Yeah.
and you just kind of assume it's light and fun, right?
That's usually the first thought, isn't it? A romantic idea. But like one story shared was about this Spanish song that sounded really nice,
Okay.
but the lyrics were actually super violent about murder.
Whoa.
And similarly, there's this French rap song, cute animation, sounded innocent. But the topic was actually about sending unsolicited explicit pictures online. Pretty disturbing.
Wow.
So it's something for you, the listener, to maybe be aware of when you're listening to stuff from other cultures.
That's a really powerful reminder, actually, to maybe dig a bit deeper sometimes, not just take things at face value. Especially, yeah, across languages. You could be jamming out to something with a really dark message without even realizing it.
Precisely. And that kind of leads into another thing that gets romanticized a lot. Organized crime. The mafia, gangster movies.
Right, right. There's definitely fascination there. The style, the power, maybe that outlaw, underdog vibe sometimes.
Yeah, fighting the system, that kind of thing. But the reality, as, several people pointed out in these accounts, it's just miles away from that Robin Hood picture.
Not Robin Hood, huh?
Not at all. As one person put it, pretty bluntly, they're terrible people, psychopaths and murderers.
Hmm.
Maybe the appeal comes from wanting power or belonging. especially if you feel powerless yourself.
Hmm.
But it's so crucial for you listening to remember the actual violence and suffering involved.
It is interesting, though, how characters like, say, Tony Soprano, who are clearly shown as sociopaths,
Yeah.
still get kind of idolized.
Yeah.
It really shows how that romantic image in the media can just overshadow the terrible things they actually do.
It does. It taps into something, maybe, about the stories we're drawn to, even when the morals are questionable, to say the least.
Definitely.
Okay, let's switch tracks again. Another job that gets the glossy treatment, especially on food TV.
Ah.
Celebrity chefs.
Oh, yeah. The amazing food, the travel. Looks so exciting.
But the reality, according to one person who lived it, it's much more about just grueling, physically exhausting work. You know, behind the scenes, long hours, intense heat in the kitchens, the physical labor, and constantly having to manage staff, often young people who came in thinking it would just be fun.
Right. Drawn in by the TV image.
Exactly. It's a huge leap from that polished picture you might see.
So yeah, from film sets to kitchens, seems like a lot of these quote-unquote dream jobs are way harder and less glamorous than we think. Okay, let's move on. Let's explore some things that maybe offer a kind of escape or status, but have a really significant dark side that you might not always see.
A really big one here is the narco or cartel culture. It might get romanticized, especially maybe by younger folks who haven't lived through the devastation.
Yeah.
But the truth is just extreme violence and destruction. And that reality often gets totally lost in how it's portrayed sometimes.
The story from the Colombian perspective was really powerful, I thought. For you, the listener, just imagine seeing your country's flag, your national symbol, but it's got Pablo Escobar's face and a marijuana leaf on it. The person described just this feeling of deep disgust.
Understandably.
Yeah, especially for people who lived through all the loss and suffering caused by that world. It's such a stark reminder that what looks like a cool, rebellious image to one person is just a symbol of deep pain for others.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that romantic view, often fed by certain media, it just completely ignores the immense suffering these groups cause. Then you've got the whole trope of the artist alcoholic.
Oh, yeah, we've all seen that one, haven't we? The troubled genius finding inspiration in a bottle.
But the actual experience, according to, well, many accounts we saw, is just so far from that. It's often ugly and sordid, as one person put it, marked by failing health, both physical and mental, constantly trying to keep up appearances.
The facade.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the very real dangers of trying to stop drinking without help.
Yeah.
Alcohol withdrawal can actually kill you. Serious stuff. And for you, it's important to grasp that severity.
That personal story from someone who kept up that artist alcoholic image for years, that was really sobering.
Yeah.
They talked about running miles just to fight hangovers, looking functional on the outside, but inside just battling this severe addiction. Their doctor warned them it could kill them within years.
Wow. And the really key point there for your awareness is how incredibly risky it is to try and detox from alcohol alone without medical help.
Right.
The stories of people dying or nearly dying just stand in such stark contrast to that romantic idea of just deciding to quit one day.
And even the description of recovery itself, often depressing and boring. It really cuts through any romance, doesn't it? It does.
It's not some glamorous self-discovery trip. It's often just long, hard, and sometimes, monotonous. We even read about people suffering actual brain damage from alcoholism.
Yeah.
Just devastating, miles away from any appealing image.
Yeah, it truly is. Which kind of leads us to hustle culture. You know, the idea of always working, grinding nonstop as the way to succeed.
Oh, yeah, that's everywhere.
It's often presented as something to aspire to, right?
Yeah.
But the reality, according to these firsthand stories, it's just a direct line to burnout. Unsustainable.
Totally.
People promoting it were even called liars in one comment, which really highlights for you how deceptive that whole romantic ideal can be.
It's that constant pressure, isn't it? To always be on, always productive. But I mean, we're human. We can't run like that forever.
Exactly. Rest, balance, they're essential, even if they don't get celebrated in the hustle narrative.
Right.
And then there's another lifestyle that sometimes gets a romantic sheen. Homelessness or couch surfing.
The free spirit, the nomad idea.
Yeah,
or like it's some raw earthly experience. But that often just completely misses the much harsher side.
which is.
Well, the accounts we saw described significant trauma, deep loss, being really vulnerable to exploitation.
Okay.
And surprisingly, it can even be really expensive. Without a stable home, just meeting basic needs food, hygiene becomes this constant battle.
Yeah.
And having no safety net just leaves people incredibly vulnerable. It's so far from that romantic vision you might have encountered.
The details really hit home, like having to eat out constantly because you can't cook.
Right. Or needing a gym membership just to get a shower.
Yeah.
It shows the hidden costs, the daily grind of being homeless. It's worlds away from any romantic idea of freedom.
It really does underscore for you just how fundamental stability is and how easily we can take it for granted. Okay, let's shift again into some of the hidden burdens around care and connection, areas that often get painted with a rosy brush.
Like leaving a toxic or abusive relationship, it often gets shown as this like instant moment of triumph. Liberation, joy,
Sunshine and rainbows, right?
exactly. But the reality, as so many people described it so eloquently, is this exhausting process, untangling yourself from someone who fundamentally disrespected you.
It's not like flipping a switch.
Not at all. And for you, it's important to get the long-lasting effects, the impact on your brain chemistry, feeling frozen in time, often finding that people don't understand why it takes so long to heal. There's often little sympathy for that drawn-out process. Like the saying goes, the body keeps the score. Recovery is often lonely and long.
The comparison someone made to Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt was interesting.
How so?
Well, the show uses humor to talk about trauma, which can offer some comfort, maybe,
Yeah.
but it probably doesn't capture the full depth, the complexity of really healing from abuse. It's something for you to consider when you see things like that.
That's a really important distinction. Then there's the idea of romantic persistence. You know, in movies, the guy who just won't take no for an answer.
Oh, the grand gestures, pursuing someone against all odds.
Yeah. It's often shown as admirable, this unwavering dedication. But the overwhelming feeling in the accounts we read, it's not romantic at all.
What is it then?
Often described as shitty juvenile behavior and, frankly, harassment.
Yeah.
The personal stories were chilling, terrifying stalking experiences, feeling unsafe, getting threats, even actual physical violence like stabbing. It's a brutal reminder of the danger behind that so-called persistence that you might see romanticized.
And the frustration people express with the legal system, how hard it is to get help before something terrible happens, plus the victim blaming, it just adds to the trauma. It's such a critical point for you to understand.
Yeah.
No means no, always.
Absolutely. Okay, let's think about working with animals. Veterinary medicine, lots of people imagine it's just cuddling cute puppies and kittens all day.
The dream job for animal lovers, right?
That's the perception. But the reality shared in these accounts, often underpaid, emotionally draining, physically hard work. Yeah. Dealing with difficult clients, grieving owners, facing really high rates of suicide in the vet profession.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's alarming. And the constant financial stress, both for the vets and the owners trying to afford care, these are huge, often unseen burdens. For you, it's important to see past the cute animals.
The stories about having to euthanize hundreds of animals, the emotional toll that takes, that really shatters the ideal image.
It does.
It sounds like a job filled with compassion fatigue, really tough ethical calls that leave scars.
It really is. And, you know, while overly protective or jealous partners get played as romantic or passionate sometimes in fiction,
Yeah.
the reality can feel genuinely threatening, controlling. And similarly, that myth about caring for disabled family members being automatically fulfilling or noble, that gets challenged directly by stories of strained relationships, resentment, just huge amounts of worry. Important perspectives for you to think about.
And the practical stuff faced by people with disabilities, just how inaccessible the world often is, the pain, the limitations, and that horrible misconception that being on disability is like a constant vacation.
Oh, yeah, right.
When the reality is often poverty, chronic pain, social stigma, just awful.
It is. And finally, being a full-time caregiver. Often romanticized as pure selflessness. But the accounts show it's incredibly demanding, draining, isolating, often leaves no room for the caregiver's own life.
And often done out of necessity, right? Like no other choice.
Exactly. Often born out of necessity, not choice.
These are such significant, often hidden realities. It's vital for you, the listener, to recognize those burdens. Okay, let's switch focus to some common misconceptions about mental health.
Yeah, unfortunately, mental health issues sometimes get, well, romanticized in media, online, as making someone more interesting or getting attention.
Right.
But the honest truth from these accounts, constant negativity, anxious paranoia, it can actually push people away, which leads to this exhausting need to constantly mask how you're really feeling inside.
So that sounds incredibly isolating.
It is, and it's a crucial point for your understanding. And the misunderstandings around specific conditions, like bipolar disorder, they can be really harmful.
How so? Like the mania?
Exactly. The manic or hypomanic phases, they're often wrongly shown as like fun times, creative bursts, high energy.
Yeah, productive even.
But the reality, these episodes can wreck relationships, cause serious physical harm, lead to financial ruin,
Wow.
and often involve intense suicidal thoughts, uncontrollable anger, intrusive thoughts. And even when someone with bipolar is feeling normal, stable, people might still question it, ask if they're manic, which is just incredibly invalidating. For you, it's so important to understand the real nature of this condition.
And similar things happen with anxiety and ADHD, right? Not just quirky traits.
Not at all. They can be genuinely crippling, seriously impacting your ability to function, causing intrusive thoughts, debilitating panic attacks.
And people using terms like, I'm so OCD about being tidy, or so bipolar about changing their mind.
Yeah, that casual, inaccurate use just trivializes the real suffering of people living with these conditions. It's something for you to really be mindful of in how you talk.
Definitely.
And with ADHD, it's crucial to get that it's way more than just trouble focusing. It can mean major issues with auditory processing, like understanding speech, and just a constant struggle for clarity, even with medication. And finally, the whole romanticizing of self-harm or thinking it's done for attention.
Yeah.
The accounts strongly condemn that. It almost always masks deep underlying mental health struggles and causes real harm.
These are serious health issues. They need real understanding, empathy, not being trivialized or, romanticized.
Exactly.
Okay, let's explore some of the unseen hardships with certain lifestyles or jobs that look appealing from afar.
Like living or working on a cruise ship. Might sound like constant travel, exotic places.
Yeah, fun.
But the reality report often involves really low pay, incredibly long hours, and sadly, a high rate of alcohol abuse and sexual harassment.
Oh, wow.
Plus this feeling of being really cut off, disconnected from your real life back on land.
And that romantic idea of being a touring musician, like in a Smalley band, hitting the road, sharing your music, that often gets hit hard by the reality, doesn't it?
Brutally, yeah. Living in a cramped van, poor conditions, not enough food, vehicle breakdowns, and just a really lonely lifestyle, often.
Not so glamorous.
Not usually, no. And animal rescue work. It's driven by compassion, obviously.
Of course.
But it's so much more than just cuddling animals.
Right.
It's constant vet needs, huge financial strain, emergency trips at all hours.
Endless cleaning, I bet.
Endless cleaning, socializing efforts, dealing with the trauma of seeing abused animals, making heartbreaking euthanasia decisions, and even risking getting bitten yourself. For you, it's a tough, often heartbreaking field.
Even seemingly idyllic stuff like living off the land, off grid, that comes with big challenges too, right? Hard physical work, potential for conflict, especially when things get tough, like bad weather.
Definitely not easy. And working in a library, people picture this quiet, peaceful place.
Just reading books all day.
If only. It often involves a surprising amount of social work, helping people find resources, research help, tech support,
Okay.
managing difficult patrons, people experiencing homelessness, sometimes people with inappropriate intentions, plus all the unseen work of setting up events. It's far from a quiet reading retreat.
And being a long-haul truck driver, that paid-to-travel idea.
Gets a reality check, too. Often it just means seeing highways and truck stops.
Right.
Dealing with the physical toll, the loneliness, and strict schedules that leave zero time for actual sightseeing.
Even being a strong single mom, or just motherhood generally, rewarding, yes, but.
It involves constant sacrifice, unexpected challenges. It's far from any simple idea of ease or natural instinct. For you, it's a demanding role, often without enough support.
And finally, the idea of sugar daddies or sex work as easy money.
Yeah, that completely ignores the huge dangers. Drugs, abuse, exploitation, violence.
Yeah.
The stigma.
And the difficult situations that often push people into it.
Exactly. The desperate circumstances. It's a much more complex and often dangerous reality.
These accounts really give a stark, important look at the tough realities hiding behind appealing surfaces. Okay, let's just quickly touch on some other unexpectedly hard experiences that might get romanticized or misunderstood.
Finding a dead body, for instance. True crime makes it seem, I don't know, fascinating.
Yeah.
But in reality, it's deeply traumatic. It can have long-lasting psychological impacts for anyone who goes through that.
And the epic teacher we see in movies,
Hmm.
that sets up such unrealistic expectations for real teachers who are juggling so many roles: teacher, social worker, therapist,
Right.
often without enough support, dealing with politics, just facing burnout. For you, it's
That's right.
important to appreciate that immense pressure. Even adoption, often beautiful, yes, but not always a fairy tale.
No. Some adoptees sadly face abuse in their adoptive families or deal with insensitive comments their whole lives. And, well, anyone who's had a newborn
Yeah.
knows. The reality is way more demanding, all-consuming than usually shown.
Definitely.
And interestingly, even saving someone's life, you'd think it's purely heroic, glorious,
Right.
but it can actually be traumatic for the rescuer. The
Mhm.
what-ifs, the weight of it all, and even small things like having large breasts can mean real physical discomfort, unwanted attention from a young age.
The accounts also pointed out that when men say they want an inexperienced woman,
Yeah.
the real motive might be about control, not genuine preference. And a relationship where someone constantly challenges you
Sounds stimulating.
often just means constant arguing.
Ah,
And finally, that idea of just taking a break to get your life in order, sometimes that masks something much more serious, like the stark example someone gave of needing a doctor-mandated psych hospital stay after a breakdown.
wow. Not exactly a spa retreat.
Not at all. And let's not forget the simple, direct point made: poverty is not romantic. It's such a powerful reminder for you, the listener, that appearances can be so deceiving. Many things we idealize from afar have these huge, unseen challenges.
So, yeah, as we wrap up this deep dive, the main theme is pretty clear, isn't it? So many things that get romanticized in our culture hide these difficult, complex, sometimes painful realities.
Absolutely.
And getting a handle on these firsthand perspectives, it's incredibly valuable for you.
Totally agree. We really hope that exploring these personal stories helps you, our listener, maybe pause and reconsider any assumptions you might have had.
Mm.
Approaching these kinds of portrayals, maybe in media, with a bit more critical thinking, more empathy, it can really deepen your understanding of the world.
Yeah, building that deeper understanding, it just fosters more empathy, right? And gives you a more informed, nuanced view of all the different human experiences happening around us.
Couldn't agree more. And on that note, here's something for you to think about. What other parts of life do you suspect might get this same romanticized treatment?
Good question.
What other situations look appealing on the surface but might hide a much tougher reality underneath? Definitely something to mull over.
Oh, sure.
Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive.